But here's the important part of this. You got to understand, the left is not working to build anything except some pie in the sky paradise that just failed every time they've tried it. They're working to destroy all the things that get in the way of that get in the way of them manipulating the world into perfection. They're trying to destroy the family, marriage, manhood, womanhood, patriotism, the Constitution, honest judging, criminality science. But one of the most important things they're attacking is reason, our capacity to reason, the way that we think, right? You've noticed, I'm sure, that nothing they say makes sense. They say men and women are exactly the same, but a man can become a woman. Well, what would the difference be? If they're exactly the same, how can a man become a woman? It doesn't make any sense. Some men are born and they're attracted to other men, and that's perfectly natural unless that other man is a woman, and then they're a man who likes a woman, but he's a man who's a woman. It never makes sense. It's not supposed to make sense. It is supposed to get to the point where the only way that words mean anything is if they mean what the left says they mean, and the only logic there is the logic that the left says there is. And this is one of the things that I have noticed in letters that I get from people. One of the things you have to do in order to think is you have to be able to generalize, right? This is an important thing. You have to say there are species of things. Certain things are like other things. They may not be exactly like other things. They may have different traits, but there are certain things that bring us together. You can't do science without generalization. I walked into a doctor once and I said, I have this little thing right here. He said, oh, that's shingles. I said, I haven't even finished my sentence. Yeah, it's shingles. I said, are you going to look at it? He said, of course I'm going to look at it. I could be wrong, but that's what it is. Of course, because he knows what the symptoms are. He generalizes, if you have certain symptoms, you have this disease, right? And then he checks to make sure he's right, because sometimes the generalization is not true. You can't make laws that cover everybody if you don't generalize about what everybody needs, right? Like things are like, and they share a form. So what the left has done, it has taught people to regard generalizations as personal insults. So if I say a human being is a two-legged creature, I will get a letter from somebody who says, my beloved son was born with one leg. Is he not a human being? Yes, he's a human being, but a human being is still a two-legged creature. If I say men are physically stronger than women, I get, my sister Bertha can bench press 1,000 pounds. Can you? No. Men are still physically stronger than women, right? We know there are certain generalizations they can make. I want you to watch a Steve Crowder video. Now, obviously, Crowder must have been released from the institution on a work release program of some kind, because he's out there again doing this brilliant thing he does, change my mind, right? And what he says is men shouldn't play women's sports, change my mind. This idiot journalist sits down. He looks like the guy from Curious George. Remember the man with the yellow hat? The way he's dressed, he just looks like him. And Crowder, and they have this discussion, should men be allowed to play women's sports?
I don't believe that biological males should be allowed to compete with women, biological females in women's sports. If you disagree with me, I'm more than happy to hear your case and let you change my mind.
So I guess before we get into it, what is your definition of the term biological female? Is that something that would include people who are assigned female at birth that were born intersex?
So Crowder tears this guy to pieces. I mean, he just gets him on the facts. He gets him every which way. The guy gets so distracted that Curious George actually escapes and gets into all kinds of mischief. It was hilarious. But Crowder doesn't address the one thing that I was kind of interested in, was just the strategy of the guy. I mean, he gets him on all the right points, but he doesn't address the strategy. What difference does it make if a very small number of people are in fact born with two different sex organs, or different sex traits? That happens to a small number of people. It's a deformity, essentially, that usually has to be fixed by surgery, and it's sad, and there's a lot of sad things in the world, but it doesn't change the fact, just like a person being born with one leg doesn't change the fact that man is a two-legged animal, right? In the same way, we know there are men and women have different traits biologically, and different traits emotionally, and different traits in all kinds of different ways, right? By stopping you from generalizing, by making a generalization an insult, what they're essentially saying is every single person has to be treated differently. Every single person is a different category of person. We can't have laws. We can't have traditions. We can't have a core society. That's what they're trying to get at, right? And they're trying to make it, what they do is they reverse it. What they say is the exception is the rule. So one cop kills a guy in some city and suddenly, the cops are killers. The cops who save more lives of every color, and especially black lives, just by the way, are suddenly the enemies of black people, right? Because this one guy did it. So they generalize off exceptions, and they make the they say the generalizations, true generalizations, aren't true because of the exceptions. So that ends up destroying both our traditions. The things we say are generally the right thing for people to do: have families, marry, men and women marry, be monogamous, be faithful in your monogamy, give your child both a mother and a father. These are generally the good things to do. These are traditions that have built up over time by observing the way people behave. Traditions aren't just, oh, this is the way we always do it. It's not just, this is the way we always do it. It's the wisdom of the dead. It is the compiled wisdom of the dead, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel in each new generation. That's what a tradition is. So we change, but we change in accordance with our traditions. That is the conservative way forward instead of the radical way forward that destroys things. You listen, Jon Stewart, going from a great comedian, Crowder, to Jon Stewart, marked downward progression. He's got this new podcast, and he goes off attacking white people. And the stuff he says about America is taking basically the exceptions and making them the rule. Cut 8.
For however sincerely we want to reckon and listen, the truth is America has always prioritized white comfort over black survival. Black people have had to fight so hard for equality that they've been irreparably set back in the pursuit of equity.
It's not even good reasoning. First of all, when blacks were slaves in America, Africans were slaves everywhere, including Africa. Just go back and read some of the white explorers who visited Africa and were shocked at the level of slavery, the degree, how many people were being held slaves in Africa by Africans who then sold those slaves to Europeans and to Americans. This was a universal trait, so it's not, first of all, a comment on America. And yes, the journey up from that era has been a long one, and it is a noble one, and it's part of the American story, and that is great. But Andrew Sullivan, who's not exactly the most left-winger, comes on and just rips him apart with the simple observational truth. Here's Andrew Sullivan.
It's very hard to agree with some of the very premises that are being expressed tonight. As if everything is already settled. We know this country is, for example, a white supremacy. Well, I don't believe that. I think it's possibly the most absurd hyperbole I've ever heard. I'm an immigrant, so I have a slightly different view of this. I can tell you, America in 2022 is the most multiracial, multicultural, tolerant, diverse melting pot that has ever existed on planet Earth, and there is no other place on Earth even like it.
That is an obvious truth. Anybody who's lived, he says he's an immigrant, but anybody who's lived anywhere else, and I lived out of the country for 7 years, you understand that this is the gold standard when it comes for multi-ethnic culture. When you lose your traditions, you become stupid in another way, and this is what Stewart doesn't understand. Your traditions are what make you understand the right from the wrong. We know to dislike slavery because there's an America. Jon Stewart knows that inequality is wrong because there's an America. You tear down the Thomas Jefferson statue, or as in New York, you take it out of Town Hall because he owned slaves and slept with a slave. You are taking down the statue of the men who taught you that that is wrong. He's the guy. He is the guy who said, you know what, this can't happen. Nothing is so surely written in the hand of God that these people must be free. We understand people as equal, not outside of religion, only within religion, because we know they're not actually equal. We know no two people are equal, and some people are superior to others in a million different ways. Some people are superior to others in every way, and yet they are equal in the eyes of God. That is where they're equal. It is basically what the Declaration is saying. You get rid of God, you get rid of the tradition of God that we understand, you have lost that equality. You have lost all of that. Jon Stewart is standing on the shoulders of the people he condemns. The view he has is from the top of a tower of better men than him. And he's looking down at them only because he's standing on the wisdom that they created. He calls America racist, but the reason he knows is because all of those races he's condemning taught him that truth. What Sullivan says is not a generalization. It is simply the simple truth. You don't have to say, every time you say this is a great country, you don't have to say we're not perfect. That That's so obvious it doesn't have to be said. It is a great country because of what it has brought to the world and what it has achieved in the world. And the left wants to destroy that. And in order to do that, they have to destroy reason itself.